Talk about the Spanish diddler. Salute everybody. Hope everybody's enjoying their weekend. Everybody's having a good time. It's been a while, I know, but we're here to conduct business. The Spanish diddler. Joe got hit with a Frico lawsuit, man. The Terror Squad Frico. We're here to talk about it tonight. Let me know what you guys' thoughts on it. We're gonna talk about 4,000 sex acts Joe was alleged to have his former artist TA take part of. I'm making a poll real quick. Give me 1 second, y'all. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? I just want to ask the question. And listen, these are all allegations. I have no proof. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler, though? I want to know tonight. Let me put that in the chat. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Let me know. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? I want to know. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Actually, I wrote that wrong. Give me 1 second, y'all. I wrote that wrong. Let me end that poll. Hold on. Let me know. Give me 1 second. Let me just make this poll for y'all. Give me 1 second, man. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? We're about to get to the meat and potatoes of this. Is Fat Joe? Hold on. The Spanish diddler. We gotta ask that question tonight. We need to know to keep the community safe, the communities at large. To keep them safe. We need to know if Fat Joe the Spanish diddler. He's been out here running around with his shirt off, flopping around. We need to know if he's the Spanish diddler. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Now, I just ran through some of this lawsuit. It's crazy. The lawsuit is alleging Fat Joe made a former artist of his. The name of the artist is called TA. Allegedly, the lawsuit says that Fat Joe made him participate in over 4,000 sexual acts. 4,000. And he's saying that, pretty much Fat Joe was on that diddler type of wave. He was in the corner with a bottle of Astroglide, a bottle of, baby oil. He was doing the unthinkable. And we have to ask the question. We need to know what's going on. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Is he out here, living a double life? Is he on some diddler activities? Is he the one, jerking and working that thing in the corner while, somebody's doing all the work? Is Fat Joe possibly a cuck, as you will? I don't really want to get into that, but is he possibly a cuck? Does he like to watch other people have sex? Does he like to watch? Maybe not engage, but maybe he likes to watch. Salute the Cason. Salute the Cason. Let me know in the chat too. I want to know, is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? But yeah, 4,000 sex acts allegedly Fat Joe made him participate in, and TA is alleging that there is a 15 or 16-year-old female that Fat Joe had intercourse with. So he's alleging that Fat Joe is a PDF file. He's alleging that. He's alleging that in a lawsuit. Now listen, I have no proof of any of these claims. I have no wherewithal. These are all allegations, and Fat Joe is innocent until proven guilty, and he deserves his to be heard in court and have his defense. But let's just be honest. Fat Joe was friends with a lot of sexual deviants in the industry. I mean, now we look at Diddy and we back in the day we didn't say these things about him. Back in the day we probably thought that, not necessarily he was squeaky clean, but clearly when we see all these things, when we see the 1,000 bottles of baby oil that came out, the picture came out, when we see all of the proof of, the escorts that he hired and all of this stuff that's coming out, and we see Fat Joe was, he was close to Diddy. He was friends with Diddy. Now I'm not saying they went to Thanksgiving dinner together. I'm not saying that they woke up, and had Christmas with each other's families. I'm not saying that. But these dudes were close. These dudes, they've been in a couple meetings. They definitely been at a few parties. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Fat Joe may have participated in some of these diddler activities, or maybe he was influenced by the diddler. Um, I don't think that's out the realm of possibility here. Now, if we're talking about minors here, and I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be delicate with this, right? I'm gonna be delicate with this because we talked about diddler. Fat Joe has records with Mr. R. Kelly. Anybody want to talk about that? R. Kelly. Fat Joe was a very frequent collaborator with Mr. Robert Kelly. Is it possible? Now, I have no knowledge. I have no clue. I have no, these are all allegations. This is what Mr. TA is alleging in his federal lawsuit against Mr. Joseph Carnegie. But is it possible that these are habits, that these are addictions that Mr. Fat Joe picked up from hanging around with the diddler, hanging around with Kells, the Pied Piper, the king of R&B? Make no mistake about that. Put some respect on that man's name. But is it possible that he may have picked up some of these habits, some of these addictions, some of these degenerate behavior from these individuals? He was close with these. He was collaborators with these individuals. We want to know. I would like to know. Salute to Sinclair. I see Sinclair's in the building. What's up, Sinclair? Glad to see Sinclair. Yeah, I want to know. Oh, somebody says Nigeria. Hey, what's up, Nigeria? Nigeria's in the building. Salute, salute, salute. Yeah, I want to know, is it possible that Fat Joe participate in any of these things? Now, in the lawsuit, it's alleging 4,000 sex acts. That's a lot of sex acts. That's a lot of sex acts. 4,000 sex acts. He's alleging that Fat Joe made him do it. Not only made him do it, but that Fat Joe wanted to watch. What are we hearing about Diddy? Diddy wanted to watch. Diddy wanted to have people watch him. He wanted to watch. He wanted to watch people have relations with his girlfriend. Relations. He wanted to hire male escorts. Is it possible? I'm just saying this is just a possibility. I have no clue. I have no knowledge. Is it possible that Fat Joe is suffering from the same degenerate sexual deviant behavior? Where he didn't, maybe, Fat Joe, he's a street guy. He grew up in the projects. He's looked at as a quote unquote street rapper, right? He has respect in his neighborhood. Is it possible that Fat Joe didn't want to hire um, a sex worker, a male sex worker? How would Joe look, hiring a sex worker like he doesn't have that. Even Diddy didn't allegedly hire a sex worker. He would have Cassie go out and go, get the sex worker for him, right? So is it possible that Fat Joe didn't want to hire a sex worker, but he had friends, he had people he worked for, people that worked for him, and then he said, I don't have to hire a sex worker. I have one of my new artists. I have one of my new artists do something, and I'll watch. I'll have one of my new artists or one of my friends that I'll pay them and have them do something sexual, and I'll watch it. I'm just saying, this is within the realm of possibility. Sinclair says, I think many are compromised in the industry. That's a fact. They are. That's a fact. A lot of people salute the Hustle Man. I see Hustle Man's in the building. What's up, Hustle Man? Yeah, man, I think Fat Joe possibly, maybe suffering from the same addiction that Diddy is suffering from. A lot of these artists, they have this, facade, like, whether it be a being a street dude, or whether being a thorough dude, a real dude, whether it being them having a lot of money. A lot of them have this facade that they feel that they have to live up to. But like anybody else, they have these deep dark secrets. They have these things that they're hiding from the world. They have these things that they're dealing with that they can't tell the world. They have too much ego to go to therapy. They don't want to have the world know. For all we know, Joe likes to get on all fours and take it up the rectum. For all we know, I'm just saying, hypothetically, pause. Hypothetically, we don't know what makes these dudes tick. I mean, we don't know. We don't know. I'm just saying, a lot of these dudes in the industry, they have ticks. They have addictions. They have things that they're dealing with that they're not telling the world. And they refuse to get help for these things. They refuse to get therapy for these things. They have all the money in the world to get the therapy for these things and the help and the rehabilitation for these things. But the ego, you don't think Diddy could have went into a therapy and got some type of closure for some of the things he's dealing with, or he could have went to some type of rehabilitation center? It was the ego that prevented him from going. No, 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 I don't have time to get help for these sexual deviant behaviors. I'm gonna go make more money. I don't have time for this. I'm gonna keep feeding the beast, and that's with a lot of these celebrities. So I'm saying it's not out the realm of possibility that Fat Joe was doing the same. Allegedly. Yeah, allegedly. This is we're in the realm of allegedly. We're in the realm of allegedly land. We're in allegedly land. We're going down alleged boulevard, and we're gonna make a cross at the intersection of habeas corpus. Yeah, this is all allegedly. I have no proof. Fat Joe is with Rock Nation. I don't want no smoke with Rock Nation. I don't want no smoke. I don't want Desiree Perez bugging and wiring my house. I'm good. I don't have no smoke with Rock Nation. I have no problem with Rock Nation. But these are allegations. And I'm just saying, we have to bring up a lot of things when it comes to Fat Joe, because these things are all coming out. If we're hearing about Fat Joe allegedly being a PDF file. Now let's go back. The Hip Hop Museum was opening up. Let's go back. I want to know if you guys remember this. We're gonna talk. We're gonna talk tonight. A couple years ago, the Hip Hop Museum was being opened. The Hip Hop Museum was being opened, and they were in close proximity, and they were working in collaboration with the Zulu Nation. How many of you remember this? And there was an issue that the Zulu Nation and the Hip Hop Museum had, because they were dealing with allegations of Mr. Africa Bam Booty. How many of y'all remember this? How many of y'all remember this? Africa Bam Booty, other known as Africa Bambaataa, allegedly he did things unspeakable in Bronx River, and violated a lot of young people in that community, right? Walk with me. Fat Joe, he took a position of, he don't know none of this. He never heard this. Almost, in the realm of almost supporting Africa Bambaataa. He never, condemned him. He never spoke out against him. He never, took the side of the victims. He never did any of that. He was a strong proponent of supporting Mr. Africa Bambaataa. And he's not the only one, because I'm not going to just throw Joe underneath the bus. It was Funk Master Flex. He came out and supported Bambaataa, Fat Joe, and a few other. KRS-One, he supported Africa Bambaataa. It was a couple of people. A lot of celebrities came out and supported him. But this opens up the door, and these are things that we're going to have to speak about. Is Fat Joe's support of Bambaataa, did he look at Africa Bambaataa as kindred spirits? Did he look at Africa Bambaataa as someone, as a figure to have sympathy upon, because he is dealing with the same issue and same degenerate behavior? These things need to be talked about, because they're alleging that Fat Joe allegedly, you know, did unspeakable acts with a child, with a minor. Now, if this is true, this is true. I don't know if this is true. These are all allegations. But if this is true, then we have to get Fat Joe up out of here. Allegedly, if these are now, he deserves his day on in court, and the victims, alleged victims, they need to come forward so we could all speak about this, so we could all bring this to the forefront. But I think that this is interesting, because he did support Bambaataa. Sinclair says Diddy had 20 hours a week to do freak offs. He could have went to therapy for an hour a week. That's a fact. That's a fact. But you know what it is, Sinclair? A lot of these celebrities, they have too big of an ego. They have too big of an ego. You really think Diddy, with his ego, with his maniacal behavior, with his addictions, do you really think he has the ego? Do you really think he has the strength to put his ego, to the side and say, well, let me sit down for 2 hours and have some therapy? We all know they could afford it. We all know they could afford. Diddy could literally pay for a therapy 24/7. He could literally pay for a whole rehabilitation center just to help himself, just to heal himself of his degenerate behavior. But his ego won't allow him to. His ego won't allow him to do that. His ego will allow him to go out to the next party, find the new chick to have relations with, have her go out there and look for more sex workers and for him to feed his, degenerate behavior. These people refuse to get help, He refused to get that help that he needed, That's a fact. But in terms of Fat Joe, now, again, like I'm saying, we have no proof of Fat Joe participating in these acts. I have no proof. These are all allegations from his former artist by the name of TA. But it looks nasty. It looks nasty. And I also, I'm gonna shoot Fat Joe a little bit of bell. And I know I've been going in on him. I've been going on him very hard. But I'm gonna shoot him a little bell. He doesn't have the history. Like when we look at the history of R. Kelly, we see the history of him with doing all types of degenerate behavior with minors and all this. There's a pattern there. With Diddy, it's been well documented on the freak offs and the things that he's been participating in, and it's been well documented on these two people. In terms of Fat Joe, I don't hear too many things about him in the industry. Yeah, in terms of being a sexual degenerate, I don't really hear too much things about that. This is the first I'm hearing of it, so I'm gonna shoot Joe that much bell. I have not heard these things before. I don't hear a lot of stories of this with Joe, so I'm gonna give him that much. I'm gonna give him that much. I've never heard these things before, but if these things are true, these things are nasty. These things are nasty, and I don't know. Now let me get into this because I did want to talk about this for a second. Let me get into this for 1 second. And salute to everybody that's in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button. When it comes to Joe, right? When it comes to Fat Joe, and I've been saying that, and this is kind of off the topic. This is kind of off the topic of his lawsuit that he's dealing with. I want to know this though. This is what I want to know, and this is what's been bothering me about Fat Joe. Why don't we see Fat Joe participating in the ICE protests? Why don't we see him out there? Of course, now he won't be doing it, and I understand he's dealing with a lawsuit. He's probably going to get low or probably just be about his business, and I'm not knocking him for that. But as a proud Hispanic man, as a proud Latino American, as a proud, a person of that community, why don't we see Fat Joe out there in the mix when it comes to the ICE protest, when it comes to that movement? I keep hearing rumblings of, people from that protest, calling on Black Americans to help. Black Americans, they need to be out here. Black Americans, Black Americans. Why aren't we seeing Latino Americans like Fat Joe, Jennifer Lopez? Let's call them out. Shakira, Bad Bunny. Let's keep calling them out. A bunch of individuals from that community. Why are they so silent? Why don't we see them at the forefronts? Why aren't they out there in the protest? I want to know. I want to, especially Fat Joe. Fat Joe, he's considered a legend in hip hop. He has a voice. He has a huge voice. He has a huge platform that he could be using to aid that movement, aid that protest. Um, why isn't he doing more for that community? Why isn't he doing more in terms of talks? I want to see Fat Joe down there in California, holding up a sign in one hand and holding a White Castle slider in the other. I want to see him out there doing more for that community. I think he needs to be doing that because that community, the Latino community, has supported him throughout the years. Let's be real. A lot of black people don't respect outside of New York because I'm not gonna lie, Fat Joe. A lot of people listen to Fat Joe in New York that are black or whatever, but outside of New York, black people don't listen to Fat Joe. Black people don't listen to Fat Joe down south. I'm gonna hate to break it down to y'all. They don't listen to Fat Joe, and they don't listen to Fat Joe in California. They don't listen to Fat Joe down south. So it was Latino Americans that were supporting him in those markets during his career. It was the Latino community in California supporting him. It was the Latino community down south that was supporting him, buying his records, showing up to his concerts. So I think he owes it to that community. They've supported him. They've held him down. They've supported his career. They supported his lifestyle. They brought his brands. They supported the artists that he's came out with. He needs to be out there doing more for that community, doing more, holding up the signs, showing up at the protests. He needs to be out there. So I'm asking that as well. Why don't we see Fat Joe out there doing the work, talking to that community? I would love to see him out there. McGregor says, Saludos. Tal todo. Salute, 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 salute. I don't speak Espanol, but salute, salute. Yeah, but Fat Joe, he now, like I said, I don't want to put that on Joe's jacket. I don't want to say Fat Joe is a PDF foul. I don't want to say Fat Joe is guilty. Fat Joe deserves his time in court. He deserves to go through the process. But if any of this is true, especially the whole, the minor thing, right? The whole minor thing, because Fat Joe, if Fat Joe made this man allegedly participate in 40,000 acts of sexual activities, I mean, it just sounds like three consenting adults, having relations. And if nobody's going to come forward, then it's really no smoking gun. But the whole minor thing, Fat Joe being attached to minors, now that's interesting. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Did he diddle some young individuals out there? Are we going to see people come forward in the Bronx? Maybe we need to call Fat Joe the Spanish Bambada, the Spanish Bambooty. You know, maybe we should call Fat Joe the Spanish Bambooty. You know, are we gonna see um people from Soundview Project? I think that's the projects Fat Joe comes from. Are we gonna see victims from Soundview Project come forward? Did Fat Joe diddled me in the project buildings? Are we gonna see this? I have no clue, but I mean, Fat Joe, he's and let's really talk about Fat Joe's career. Fat Joe has always been garbage. I'm just gonna be honest. He's always been garbage. He's always been average to trash rapper. He's what I call a buddy hustler rapper. You have rappers. Let me explain what a buddy hustler rapper is. I think Fat Joe is a buddy hustler rapper. What a buddy hustler is, they like to attach themselves to people that really have something going. A buddy hustler is someone who's attaching themselves to someone who already has a lot going. Like, he sees somebody that's really hot doing something great, and he's trying to get next to that person so he could attribute their success to his success. And I believe that's what Fat Joe has done his whole career. He's always had to attach himself to whoever the hottest guy was. Look at his hits. Look into What's Love, Ja Rule, Ashanti. Look into Make It Rain. Make It Rain was what? Lil Wayne. Now, of course, you're gonna say Lean Back. Well, he caught one, but he still had Remy on the song, and he still had an incredible producer by the name of Scott Storch. So he still attached himself. Um, you're gonna see throughout his career. Go back to John Blaze. We'll take it back to John Blaze. He had to get on a record with Nas, Raekwon, and then we get into the whole talk of Big Pun. Remember, Fat Joe was not a star until Big Pun got popping. None of that was rocking for Fat Joe early in his career. All that Flow Joe stuff and all of the stuff he put out, none of that stuff was moving until he found Big Pun. Big Pun was the one who was Grammy nominated. Big Pun was the one with the incredible lyrics. Big Pun was the one who put on for the Hispanic community when it comes in terms of hip hop. So remember, Big Pun was the one who kicked down the door, and here you have Fat Joe being another buddy hustler. He stood next to the hottest thing on the planet. Um, so Fat Joe has always been garbage. He's always been trash. He's always never been a good rapper. Nobody can anybody name a Fat Joe album that's considered a hip hop classic, or even a cult classic. Maybe not an album that the world universally looks at as a classic, but there's a select few of people who would say, "Oh, this is a good album." I don't even think he has that. He doesn't even have that. So he's always been, an average to trash rapper. Um, that's just my opinion on it. But just to go, that's why I talk about his career for a little bit. But in terms of Fat Joe in this lawsuit, we're gonna see what happens. We're gonna see what happens. If he's out there diddling kids, though, I don't know, Fat Joe. That doesn't sit right with me, did he? The Spanish diddler. Let me look at this poll. Hold on. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? We got 3 votes on that. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Let me know in the chat. I want to know. I'm outside right for. Oh yeah, I was muted. I apologize for that. I'm sorry. Yeah, the case it's a civil federal case. It's a civil federal case. Um, it's not a criminal case. There are no victims outside of TA. TA is alleging that Fat Joe he made him participate in over 4,000 sexual acts that he did not want to participate in. He's alleging that Fat Joe was masturbating and watching him. He's also alleging that Fat Joe had intercourse with minors. He's also alleging that in that case. So it's a very nasty case. It's a very nasty case. Now, some people may say, you know, maybe TA is a disgruntled employee, which that's not, out the realm of possibility. He may just be a disgruntled employee, former employee of Fat Joe, and maybe he's just trying to get a bag. I don't think that's out the realm of possibility. But at the end of the day, I mean, when these allegations get put on your jacket, it's a bad stain. It's a bad stain. When Jay Z had these allegations put on him, Jay Z had an allegation of him allegedly violating someone at the MTV Music Awards when they were a minor. It looked it nasty. It's bad PR. Every event you're showing up to, these are celebrities. These are not these are not people that live, regular life. These are people that have lived their whole lives in the public eye. And some people say that there's no such thing as bad publicity. I disagree. There is such thing as bad publicity. If you have allegations of you violating someone young, allegations of you violating a woman, allegations of, anything that just is vile and degenerate sexual deviant behavior. These are bad PR. This is bad PR. You're showing up at the award ceremonies, and the females in the event, they're looking at you up and down like, I wonder if he did it. Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's waiting for you to act up. Everybody's waiting for you to act irrational and say, I think he did it. Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's plotting on your downfall. And everybody's looking at those charges and saying, is he gonna pay? Is he gonna pay those people, or is he gonna fight this case? And a lot of times we've seen celebrities say, I don't want this bad PR. Let's just settle this. I'll give you some money to let this thing go away. Fat Joe is going to have to fight this case. He can't pay this man. He has to fight this case. Salute to Warzone. Warzone says, I know to TA. He a good dude. Know him from before Terror Squad. Oh, you know TA? Yeah, man. Listen, man. He's alleging that Fat Joe made him participate in over 40,000, not 40,000, but 4,000 acts of sexual deviancy. He's alleging that Fat Joe made him go into hotel rooms with all types of women, and Fat Joe was in the room, sweating. Fat Joe, he loved taking off his shirt, 300 pounds, sweating like a hog in a slaughterhouse, and he had a bottle of Astroglide, and he was, pumping and dumping, allegedly. This is all in the case. This is all in the lawsuit. And the lawsuit is alleging Fat Joe made him participate in all types of sexual acts, and he was watching. He was on his Spanish Diddy wave. Now I don't know how true that is. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if this is all felonious. This may be all hogwash, but it's bad PR. It's bad PR. Bad PR. Think about it. If you were a celebrity, let's say you were a famous actor. Take it off rap for 1 second. Take it off rap. Let's say if you was a famous actor, politician. Let's say you were an NBA player. Let's say you were any person that was a celebrity, right? And you have sponsors, you have corporations backing you, you have all these different, entities backing you, supporting you. It looks bad. It looks bad. Think about it. You got a Coca-Cola sponsorship, and the first thing you see when you log on the internet is your name attached to sexual assault and minors, and this is bad. This is bad. This is bad for anyone, and this is why Jay-Z fought so hard when he got his allegations put on him. He fought tooth and nail. And that's what Fat Joe's going to have to do. He's going to have to fight this thing. I don't want to hear nothing about him paying off someone. They settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. I don't want to hear that, Fat Joe. You got to fight this case. You got to fight this case, and you got to countersue this man. And Fat Joe, You better hope you better hope he ain't got no tapes and I better Fat Joe. I hope he don't pull a Cassie on you. I hope he don't pull a Cassie on you. And next thing you know, we hearing about you settling out of court for an undisclosed amount. I hope that doesn't. Listen, I'm not wishing that on Fat Joe. I'm not wishing that on him. I don't want to see that. But I hope so. I hope we don't. I hope we don't hear. That's when we know it really hit the fan. If we hear Fat Joe settled for an undisclosed amount, if TA got some tapes, if he got some, proof of not only Fat Joe making him engage in sexual activities, and allegedly him being with minors at a time, if he has any proof of this, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look good. And I tell you right now, if Fat Joe settles for an undisclosed amount and within federal court as a civil lawsuit, the feds may have to take a look into him. Remember, Cassie's case was federal as well. It was a federal civil lawsuit. What happened? Diddy pays her off. Next thing you know, a couple weeks later, the feds come kicking down the door, right? The feds come kicking down the Miami home, the New York apartment. They're catching Diddy at the airport. Listen, Fat Joe, I mean, I hope it's not true. I hope it's not true. Salute to Koopa High. He says, what it do, Sinclair brethren? Salute to everybody that's in the chat right now. We got 6 people in the chat. Hit that like button, yo. Hit that like button. We're talking about Fat Joe, Mr. Don Connor Gia. Is he the Spanish diddler? They're alleging that Fat Joe made a man by the name of TA engage in 4,000 sex acts. They said that, Fat Joe was in the room. He pressured this man into having relations. He was, sweating like a whore in church with no shirt on his back, pumping with a bottle of Astroglide in his hand. Allegedly. Oh, a fly just went into my eye. My fault, y'all. A fly just went into my eye. Yeah, but these are all allegations. These are not. I have no proof. This is what's in the lawsuit, though. This is what's in the lawsuit. Do you guys believe it? Do you guys believe these things? And I said it earlier that I haven't heard these things. I'm gonna give Fat Joe a little bit of bail here. I haven't heard these things. When we look at Diddy, when we look at R. Kelly, when we look at a lot of different individuals within the industry, there is a pattern. There's a pattern. You've heard things. These people have, a history of these behaviors. Even though Diddy's dealing with this criminal trial and these allegations and all these things, there's been rumors for years. There's been rumors for years that Diddy was bisexual. There's been rumors for years that Diddy likes to party. There's been rumors for years that Diddy has been a sexual deviant. There's been rumors for years about these things. Now, I haven't heard rumors about Fat Joe, but it's not without the realm of possibility. I mean, Fat Joe, he was friends with Diddy. He was friends with R. Kelly. He was friends with these individuals. Now, a lot of celebrities, what they like to do, they like to say, oh, I was at the party, but I didn't see nothing. Yeah, I was in the recording studio, but I didn't see nothing. They love to say that. But my whole thing is, if you were around these people, you saw something. I'm not going to believe that Fat Joe was in a studio with R. Kelly and he didn't see a minor come through there. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't believe you ain't see no minors come through in and out of there. That studio. You ain't see nothing. You ain't see no minors come through that R. Kelly studio session. I don't believe that. You didn't see no freak offs at the Diddy party. You didn't see no bottles of lube laying around. You didn't see no male escorts coming in and out of the Diddy estate. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. You may not have been paying attention. I could take that I could take that answer. You may have been under the delusion of some things. Maybe you didn't have all the information about something, but I highly doubt that you ain't see anything. Even with Jay-Z, when because people people say things about Jay-Z, they talk about him with the double albums with R. Kelly and hanging around Diddy. I strongly believe that Jay saw something. Jay saw something. You're not gonna do two. Remember, Jay Z did two albums with R. Kelly. Two albums with R. Kelly. And then he goes on a tour. Now the tour was short lived. This is when R. Kelly got sprayed in the face with mace at Madison Square Garden, and the tour got cut short. But you're not gonna tell me you did two albums in the era of reels, because back then, this is 2000, 2001. This is the era of reels. They wasn't like emailing verses and emailing choruses to one another on the internet and on the email and stuff like that. They had to physically go into the studio and record those records. You're gonna tell me a man that we know for a fact, there's proof of this, being a sexual deviant and going after young individuals, just to say that, it's been well documented. You're not going to tell me you did two albums with that individual, with that man, with those tics, with those urges, that he just can't stop. He can't stop. The man had a whole case and got off on the case, got a not guilty verdict, and he still wound up going to jail for the same thing he got prosecuted for. You're not going to tell me that you did two albums with that individual and you saw absolutely nothing. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I am not buying it. I'm not buying it. Same thing with Diddy. When Jay says, oh, this was, we're, Jay Z, he really tried to back away from Diddy. Nobody wants to talk about it. He kind of really, that was your man's. Even though, and I'm not trying to go into what, because, 50 be having some points, but 50 be doing too much trolling sometimes. But, that was your man's, Jay. That was your man's. That was your man's. And you kind of backed away from him, what's better than one billionaire? Two. You was at the Rock Nation brunches. Y'all was wine glasses toasting, and then when the federal cases come through, when niggas getting locked up, you backed away from that man. Now listen, you made a business decision. Jay-Z has a long history of backing away from people, for business reasons. He did it to Jazzo. He did it to The Haven. He did it to Dame Dash. He did it to Beanie Siegel. He did it to a lot of rappers. For business reasons, I got to back away. He did it to Kanye. For business reasons, I got to back away from you. Now maybe that was just another business decision. He said I got to back away from Diddy, business decision. But I have a hard time believing that these individuals didn't see nothing. If you tell me, if they told me that I wasn't paying attention, or I saw things, but I just had questions on what I was seeing. I didn't really process all the information of what I was seeing. I can take that answer. Do I think Jay-Z was in a room with Diddy, jerking off with a bottle of Astroglide in his hand? No. But do I think that Jay-Z kind of knew what was going on? Maybe knew Diddy had a couple of tics, couple of urges. I don't think it's out the realm of possibility for him to see something. Same thing with R. Kelly. I don't think a lot of these people try to act like they didn't see nothing. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Sinclair says Jay-Z optics affect his bottom line. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. He's well documented on backing away from people for business decisions. He has a long history of it. We can go. I mentioned the names. I can go down from The Haven to Calvin Klein. These are his early friends in the drug game, to eventually becoming a rapper. Jazzo, backed away from Jazzo. He goes into Rockefeller. He creates a record label with Dame Dash. He backs away from Dame Dash. At one point in time, he backed away from Biggs Burke. Biggs Burke got back into his good graces, then further on in his career. Kanye makes him millions of dollars. Kanye makes him millions of dollars. Kanye goes through a psychotic episode. Kanye's dealing with a lot. Kanye, says a lot of crazy things. He backs away from Kanye. He has a long history of backing away from people when it hits the fan. He backs away from people when it hits the fan. Diddy. He's at the Rock Nation brunch with Diddy. They toasting wine glasses, champagne glasses. Hey, yuck, 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 chucking it up, having a good old time. The feds kick down the door. They raiding the apartment. They raiding the house. He backs away from Diddy. Yeah, he has a long history of backing away from people because it's going to affect his bottom line. He has a long history of this. It's well documented. If you just pay attention, you can see it. You can see it. Absolutely, you can see it. Salute to 111. Salute to 111. Yeah, man. But I just want to talk about this whole Diddy fiasco and Fat Joe, the Spanish diddler, if you will. 111 says, "What do you think about the Jews? What about the Jews? What do you want to know about the Jews? Are you talking about the Jews in terms of the Jewish people, or are you talking about the state of Israel? What are you talking about? You got to be a little bit more clear with your clarifications." I Master, salute the FBA. He's in the building. He says Spanish Diddy. Yeah, man. Fat Joe is the Spanish diddler. What's love got to do? Got to do it. What's love? It's about us. It should be about us, babe. Got to do with it. Lean back. Lean back on the minor. Lean back. Lean back on the minor. Yeah, man, is he the Spanish diddler? I want to know. I want to know. I just let me know, man. If you think so, is it out the realm of possibility? Now, like I said, I have never heard these things. I've never heard of Fat Joe, with minors. I've never heard Fat Joe in any type of sexual deviant things. But is it out the realm of possibility? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I Master says you be on fat whole head, bro. Yeah, I have to be. I have to be, bro. I have to be. Fat Joe, he represents he represents the degenerate nature of hip hop. He really does, and he also represents a lot of the refusal to grow and elevate and mature. Fat Joe is in his 50s as a Hispanic man, still using the N word. Now, listen, man, I don't know if he has any African ancestry. I have no clue. I don't have the man's DNA chart in front of me, but it's safe to say that he identifies as a Hispanic man. Fat Joe, you in your 50s identifying as a Hispanic man, why are you still using the N word? I don't judge Fat Joe 15 years old using the N word. He's a kid. I don't even judge Fat Joe, the 21-year-old, using the N word. You're a young man. You don't know better. Joe, you're 50 years old. You're half a century old. Why are you still using the N word? So to me, he represents everything. Like he just represents the degenerate nature of hip hop. He represents the refusal to grow, the refusal to mature. He represents that, and I don't like that. There's a lot of individuals in hip hop that represents this, and there's a lot of individuals that are antithetical to that. They represent maturity. They represent growth. You could look at people like Nas. You could look at people like Jay-Z. These are people who represent growth, elevation, evolution of the art form. Fat Joe just represents the de-evolution of the art form. He's like 50 years old, still using the N-word, still running around with 100 chains on his neck like dog. Like, grow up. You're 50 years old. Grow up. Show young people in hip hop that they can grow, that they can elevate, that they can mature, that they don't have to be on the internet lying about everything on the internet. Show people your elevation, your growth. You don't gotta be everywhere with 100 chains on your neck and dyeing your beard. It's like his whole refusal to grow, his whole refusal to mature within the art form, and I'm just not a fan of it. You know, so that's what he represents to me. Hooper says even Usher mom knew what she was doing when she was dropping young Usher off at the Diddy's. That's degenerate as F, and in my opinion, criminal. Yeah, listen. What a lot of people don't talk about within the industry is there's a lot of parents that have kids that want to be stars, that want to be famous, get into the music industry, and a lot of parents sell their children off. A lot of parents sell their children. Do you really think do you really think R. Kelly do you really think R. Kelly went looking for all those people that he did those things to? Do you really think he went out there and looked for those people? A lot of those young girls that came to him, the families, the mothers, the fathers, they knew well they knew well what R. Kelly was doing, but they still decided to take their young daughters up to him for audition. They knew R. Kelly ain't put out a female artist in years. They still took R. Kelly up there. Oh, maybe we're gonna get our young daughter a deal. They knew this man had urges. They knew this man had a problem. They knew that this man had crazy things going on in his head, and he had these allegations. I mean, a lot of people they only think about the tape with the tape that came out, right? But there was Aaliyah. Everybody heard those rumors about Aaliyah getting married to R. Kelly. So a lot of people knew what was going on, but they still decided to take their daughters up there. So and you see this in the industry of young people getting sold by their families, to become stars. So it definitely happens. It definitely happens. Um, yeah, y'all agreeing with him. iMaster says, "Do you hear about the Mexican dude OT using the N word?" Yeah, let me talk about that. And he said nobody going to do anything about it. S my S. Those Texan dudes should be on him. Now, I'm gonna say this. This is a problem that is not only in Texas, but it's. I believe it started in New York. I believe it started in New York. But yeah, yeah, man, that dude is an idiot. That dude is an idiot. And just the whole ego of it. What I didn't like is his ego. He had a lot of ego. And I seen the clip, and he said, "Is there any black men? Is there any black men in the room?" He. There's no black men. He's talking to a room full of black women, and he says, "Who gonna stop me from saying it?" He wants to look around the room, make sure there's black men in the room, and say, like, dog, like, yeah, trust me, if that dude went on a prison yard saying that, he would have got chin checked. He would have got shanked 20 times on the prison yard with that type of mentality. Because that wouldn't fly in no prison yard. You can say that in a room full of black women that's just there to entertain you, and they're drinking alcohol and they're just having fun. If he was on the prison yard talking that talk, he would have got shanked up like a pincushion, bro. Talking that talk like that. Are you kidding me? Talking like that? Oh, who gonna stop me from saying the N word? Like, come on, bro. Like, and it's really, and I try not to judge young people that do it like that do this, because you have to have a little bit of patience with young people. You have to understand when you get older, you understand that this is not right. That people should be a little bit more mature. But you have to have patience with young people. Young people don't figure it out. They're gonna figure it out in the long run. They're not gonna figure it out fast, like like a lot of us have. But yeah, I just thought it was just more degenerate behavior, and in a room full of black men, he wouldn't be talking like that. Maybe a bunch of black men that is allowing of that behavior, but if he was in a room full of, like I said, on a prison yard, he would have got his head knocked off his shoulders talking like that. But I don't want to blame him so much. I want to blame the culture because yes, is what he's doing wrong? Is should he be talking like that? No. Should it be allowed within our culture? No. But hip hop culture has allowed this type of degenerate behavior. We've commercialized the N word. We've commercialized it. I never forget when I went into a Foot Locker. I went into a Foot Locker, and I'm in a Foot Locker, and I see a couple of young white boys. They listening to the music in the Foot Locker. They buying sneakers, and just the N word just blasting out of the speakers. I'm just like, come on, dog. We've commercialized it. If I can go into a store in Foot Locker in a predominantly white neighborhood, and you got white boys in there buying sneakers or whatever like that, you got the N word blasting out the speaker in the Foot Locker, then we have commercialized the N word. We've allowed an area of acceptance. We've allowed it, and we need to be held accountable. We need to, we need to really hold hip hop accountable. We need to hold the artists accountable, and we need to fix it. We need to fix it. We need to fix it. Absolutely, we need to fix it. It's out of control, and but we've allowed it. So, can we blame him? Should we get on him? Yes, but we need to really fix this thing up. We really need to check ourselves. We really need to change the script. The S word. I'm not gonna say it because I have a lot of love and respect for people of the Hispanic community. I'm not gonna say it, but you don't see the S word being commercialized. You don't see the K word being commercialized. You don't see the C word being commercialized. I'm not going to say none of these racial epithets, but you don't see any of these words being commercialized. You got little white boys on the internet, N word, N word, N word, N word. Spanish kids on the internet, N word, N word this, N word that. It's out of control. And hip hop culture has allowed it. We've allowed this degenerate behavior. And we have to clean up. We have to clean up the culture. We have to clean up the culture. It's out of control. It's out of control. These racial epithets. Think about it. And I know we're going off into a whole other topic. Think about it. Kanye proved something. If anybody knows about Kanye, he dropped the song. He dropped the song about the man from Germany with the mustache. I won't say his name. But he made a song praising that man. He made a song praising that man. The streaming companies, the streaming platforms told him, you will not be able to upload this song to our platforms. They told the nigga, no, you will not upload this song to our platforms. Absolutely not. The same Negro that uploaded a song called Niggas in Paris, they told him, no, you will not upload a song to our platforms praising the man with the mustache from Germany. They told him no. That right there should have woke black people up. That should have woke us up. Kanye, see, a lot of things, the thing about Kanye, and I listen, Kanye is a lunatic, but Kanye, the one thing about Kanye I will say, he's a futurist. He's a futurist. And he was proving a point. He was proving a point, but people let it fly over their heads. Why can Kanye not upload a song praising the man with the mustache from Germany, but you allow song after song after song talking about killing N-words, doing foul things to N-words, nigga die slow, N-word this, N-word that. You allow song after song after song with millions of streams, millions of dollars being allocated to these songs. You got them on your platform. You refuse to take these songs down, but you won't let Kanye upload the song about the man with the mustache. Black people should have woke up right there. We should have woke up right there. All of the black artists should have woke up right there. All of your favorite rappers. I don't care who your favorite rapper is. I don't care if it's Kendrick, Drake, Nas, Jay, whoever it is. I don't care if they're in R&B. Every black artist should have woke up. I'm not saying they had to take their songs down because of Kanye, but every black artist should have woke up right there. There's clearly a conspiracy. There's a conspiracy here. If Kanye can't upload a song, he can't use his freedom of speech and upload a song praising the man from Germany with the mustache, but you allow hundreds of black artists to make songs about killing N-words and doing this to N-words and kill, kill, kill N-words. There's a conspiracy here. There's a conspiracy. There's a clear conspiracy here. That's all I'm going to say. Clearly a conspiracy. iMaster says this still all ties into Fat Ho. Can't stand dude. Stay on his bumper. Even his boy Pete. Pistol Pete. Talking about Pistol Pete. And said when he was up north, he had to stab all the black inmates and put a PR flag down on that yard. Let me talk. I'm gonna talk about that for 1 second. Give me 1 second. Sinclair says he definitely a guy that pushed the envelope. That's a fact. That's a fact. Let me get into Pistol Pete and him talking about stabbing inmates on Rikers Island. Now, what people in New York, they like to say, "Oh, everybody's cool." And listen, a lot of black people like me. I grew up in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. I have a lot of love for the Hispanic community, a lot of admiration, for people in the Hispanic community. I grew up around predominantly Puerto Ricans, Dominicans. I have a lot of admiration and respect for men and women in that community. But a lot of people like to think that New York has this black and brown coalition. I disagree, and you will find that more prominent in no other community than the prison community. For years, black people and Hispanic people went to war within the prison system, and now that's what Pistol Pete is referring to. Um, in Rikers Island, let's give you a little bit of historicity on Rikers Island. Black people were being oppressed on Rikers Island. Black people were being oppressed by the Latin Kings on Rikers Island. They were beating on black inmates. They were stabbing them up. They were, violating them. This is where Nine Trey comes from. A lot of people think Nine Trey started, in some neighborhood in Brooklyn. No, Nine Trey, the blood gang, started on Rikers Island because black inmates had to come together and fight against the oppression from the Latin Kings. So when Pistol Pete is saying these stories, he's saying he's talking about because he did time around that time. He did time when those wars were prevalent. He's talking about a time when he was in Rikers Island and Latin Kings was really discriminating against black people, stabbing them up, beating them up, violating them. He's talking about a time back then. So I'm just keeping it real. That's what he was referring to, you know. So I mean, it's real. It's real. So, and that absolutely was happening. That absolutely was happening. And of course, listen, a lot of black people and Hispanic people, in a lot of communities we get along. We love being around each other, and there's no type of issues and stuff like that. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. But we can't act like these things aren't prevalent as well. We can't act like that, these things are prevalent in the community where there's Spanish gangs against black gangs, where there's these Spanish people don't want to be around this sector of black people. It happens, and it happens in every community. But it's real. It's real. So I think that's what he was referring to a time back then. Um, but this doesn't reflect. This doesn't reflect everybody. And everybody in the Hispanic community isn't like that. Just like everybody in the black community isn't like that. We can't generalize all people, but that's what the That's what the time he was talking about. That's what he was referring to. That's a fact. That's a fact, though, right? And to be honest with you, when I was coming up, so like I have nothing but love and respect for the Hispanic community because I didn't have to be honest with you, I didn't have a black friend, a legitimate black friend into middle school. I didn't have a black friend into middle. All my friends were Hispanic. So if you want me to come here and just kick in the backs of Hispanic people, you're not gonna get it from me. I got a lot of love and respect for Hispanic people, but I am gonna tell the truth. But yeah, I didn't have a black friend until middle school. So that's a fact. I didn't have a black friend until middle school. All my friends were Puerto Rican or Dominican. So, like, you know, BMX bikes every summer, riding around, wilding out, punquito, chasing ice cream trucks, going to their houses, playing video games. Like all my friends were Spanish. All my friends were Spanish. But even then, I felt it was some discrimination. You know, they'll be saying little things about me on the side. You know, me being black, Negro. You know. So it is what it is. It is what it is. But I'm just keeping it real. But yeah, that's a fact though. Um, we're just speaking. We're just speaking frankly here. Um, but that's all I want to say in terms of these topics. But let me know what you guys think. Is Fat Joe the Spanish diddler? Is he the Spanish diddler? Did he diddle? Did he diddle anyone? Did he do it? But yeah, I may do another live tonight. I'm gonna see how I feel. We'll see how that works out. It's really hot. It's really hot in my house right now. I had to come outside. I'm about to turn on the AC. If I turn on the AC and I get the levels where I need it to be, I'll probably do another show tonight. But with that being said, you guys have a good weekend. Enjoy your weekend, and more than likely, you'll probably see me later tonight, God willing. But salute to all the mods. Salute to iMaster. Salute to Sinclair. Y'all have a good night, and I'll see you guys soon. Salute. We out.